Did somebody say, we have a MLB slate tonight? Somebody cue that music. It's that time again, where full-time DFS pros give you what you need to succeed. It doesn't matter if you're shooting for a GPP takedown or trying to build your bankroll by hitting in cash. We've got you covered. No BS, just DFS. Welcome to On the RotoRadar with your host, Brittingham T and Two Minds Bluff.
Welcome to your Thursday edition of On the RotoRadar, where we give you a game-by-game analysis of every MLB main slate Monday through Friday. I'm your co-host, Two Minds Bluff.
And Britt T here with you. Today we have a 8-game slate with one very obvious pitching choice, but a couple you might want to consider, and a lot of good hitting spots. I'm going to cover the cash game portion of today's slate. Bluff will help you out with the GPP portion. Let's get right into it. The very first matchup, we have the Baltimore Orioles and Alec Asher in Washington to take on the Nationals and Joe Ross. The Nationals are minus 130 favorites. The run total is the highest of the day at 10. We're in Nationals Park. How are you approaching this game?
Yeah, no interest in the pitching for me. Joe Ross could sometimes have been a play here back in the day when he was really, really tough on righties, and you have a righty-heavy lineup. But this year, since he came up and started starting, he has been getting hit hard by both sides of the plate, not inducing any soft contact, and not getting ground balls. The ball's in the air. He's giving up a ton of homers. So you got to love a lot of these Orioles bats. I still like Chris Davis would probably be my favorite just because I believe he really struggles versus lefty, especially lefty power his whole career. Same with Seth Smith. But you don't like you don't mind any of these power Orioles bats in this situation. If Manny Machado's in the game, great spot for him. Trumbo, Scope at the end.
I was just going to say, of note, Manny Machado left the game yesterday. He got slid into on a play, and he kind of gashed his forearm, it looked like. The MRA came back negative, but don't be surprised if he's not in the lineup, which might create some interesting spots. But you mentioned Joe Ross struggles against lefties, and I wanted to make this very clear. He gets crushed by lefties. Traditionally, he's just been bad, but this year, in only 14.2 innings, he's given up 5 home runs just to left-handed bats. On a hard hit rate of 40%, fly ball rate of 34%. That is some insane numbers to go up against a guy like Chris Davis, who will be hitting today, if Manny Machado's out, maybe third, and Seth Smith in the outfield, who's going to be hitting leadoff. But I just want to make sure we hammered home the point that Joe Ross against lefties in his career has been bad, but this year it's even worse.
Yeah, and if you look in 2015, 2016, he had monster splits. He had like a 2.5 xFIP versus right-hand hitters and a 5 xFIP versus left-hand. This year, again, he is getting hit hard by both sides. But yeah, he's always really struggled versus left-handed, and now that he's struggling versus everyone, he's even struggling more even more versus left-hand bats. So yeah, great spot for Chris Davis and Seth Smith.
What about the Nationals, who have the highest projected run total at 4.98? Alec Asher is a pitcher who started out of the bullpen, and they've transitioned him into a starter to deal with some of these injuries they're dealing with. How are you attacking Asher? Because he was good out of the bullpen, but as a starter, he's kind of got lit up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's gotten really lit up, and he's showing some competency. So I don't think he's a complete gas can, but still, this Nationals lineup can hit anybody, and this guy profiles, as a below average to average starter, really at best. He has been getting, as a starter too. Yeah, he's not been getting many ground balls too since he started starting. So you like this Nats team versus pitchers that let him get the ball in the air. So the obvious guys, Harper, Zimmerman, Murphy, that have been hitting the ball super hard, and Rendon himself. I think, is it Goodwin that's going to be batting the top of that lineup still?
Yeah, they've been hitting him second. They've been hitting him second, and he's super cheap on both sides. Brian Goodwin.
Yeah, should make for a decent play. Yeah, it looks. this year Asher's kind of had somewhat neutral splits, but obviously Goodwin probably hits righties better. So
Yeah, and there's something to be said. They have the Nationals have the highest projected run total, and as a starter, Asher's pitched 20 innings and given up 4 home runs and 12 earned runs. So if you can afford Bryce Harper, I mean, the spot doesn't get much better if this guy's a fly ball pitcher against Bryce Harper.
yeah, and he's
But the
not.
price is tough to get Harper in.
Yeah, and he's not getting many swinging strikes. Or no, actually, he's doing all right in swinging strikes. His K numbers are okay too. Yeah, but he's not getting a lot of first pitch strikes, only about 50%. So that helps to get hitters and hitter counts. And with Bryce Harper, that's exactly what you want, is them having to come in and throw him a pitch over the plate.
Yeah, and I'll make it simple for cash games. Neither pitcher here. If you can afford Nationals, get as many Nationals as you can. You mentioned Daniel Murphy at second. Second base is actually loaded today, but Daniel Murphy is always a great play. Ryan Zimmerman at first base deserves some consideration. But the guys you're going to see the most of are at shortstop Trey Turner, and in the outfield Bryce Harper and Brian Goodwin, because Goodwin's super cheap and Turner and Harper are just the tier 1 plays at their respective positions today. Anything else from this game before we move on?
I think we can move on.
Okay, our next game, we have the Miami Marlins and Edison Volquez coming off his 10K 98-pitch no-hitter, going into Pittsburgh to take on the Pirates and Garrett Cole. Interesting enough here, the Pirates are minus 137 favorites. The run total is 8.5. There used to be a rule of thumb in DFS that you never played a guy after a perfect game, but he only threw 98 pitches last time. How are you approaching Edison Volquez today?
Yeah, I mean, great park in Pittsburgh. Both these pitchers are definitely playable, if not on the fringe of playable. Volquez gets a decent matchup, a righty-heavy Pirates lineup. He is better versus right-hand pitching, strikes them out at a little bit higher clip, or right-hand hitting, sorry, and strikes them out a little higher clip. But, his price like on DK is 8.2. And, for me right now, he's fine. It'll be interesting to see what the lineup they roll out and how many lefties they get and if it is just Frazier, Polanco, Bell, or if they have some other guys in that to make up the lineup today. But not a ton of interest in me, but I wouldn't fault anyone for playing him. It's kind of a sketchy spot. And Garrett Cole's kind of the same. I did end up pitching Lackey yesterday. I like the spot with the decent weather in Wrigley and versus this righty-heavy team that, Lackey kind of shows more with lefties. It's kind of the same as Garrett Cole. And Lackey ended up getting hit pretty hard by the bottom of the order. And Cole hasn't really looked impressive lately. Just not really a spot that I want to target this Marlins offense, but he is, not a terrible play in my opinion. Not really any interest in any of the hitters though. What are you thinking?
In cash games, you're not going to see either of these pitchers. You may see Edison Volquez if you play some low stakes games, just because people love to play the game log and they love to play the story and they'll want to play the guy that threw a no hitter. But sharp players are not going to play Edison Volquez today for a number of factors. But I am interested in a few of the hitters, and you will see some of them in cash games. Gregory Polanco for the Pirates in the outfield. He'll be hitting cleanup with the platoon advantage. And this park is okay for lefties. You don't play righties in PNC, but lefties it's okay. So Gregory Polanco, he's got some upside here. And Adam Frazier will be hitting leadoff. And Frazier's just the guy that gets on base. He's very difficult to get out as far as strikeouts go. And so I like playing Adam Frazier in spots like this. And they're both relatively cheap. They're in the mid-3s in price. So Adam Frazier and Gregory Polanco are definitely in play.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I kind of didn't really cover Edison. He does struggle. He has struggled with lefties his whole career, giving up fly balls, homers. And, this park is awful. One of the worst parks in the league for right-hand power, but it's pretty average for left-hand power. So there's no trouble for a guy like Gregory Polanco hitting a homer here off Volquez. So I agree with you there.
And let's talk about Garrett Cole here. The Marlins against Garrett Cole there's some pretty standout BVP numbers that I wanted to mention. Christian Yelich in the outfield, who's still been priced or middling priced on FanDuel, and just great play I think today, is 7 for 14 with 3 homers against Garrett Cole. It's only 14 at-bats, but 3 home runs and 14 at-bats is something that catches my eye. Yelich will be hitting third. He's got Stanton in front of him and Ozuna behind him. On the season, Cole's allowed a 367 WOBA with 10 home runs in 36 innings on a hard hit rate of 42%, a fly ball rate of 39%, and he's striking out 19% of left-handed bats. So I've definitely got some interest in Yelich, BVP aside, just as a play on his own. And at second base, I think you're going to see lots of D. Gordon today across the industry in both cash and GPP games. This is a prime spot. You always target the Pirates for steals, as is. And now today we've got a guy that is dominant in that category. If D. Gordon gets on base, you're hoping it's a single or a walk or a hit by pitch so he can steal second and most likely try to steal third at some point in this game. I love D. Gordon's price. It's on DraftKings, it's 4.2, which isn't great. But on FanDuel, he's 2.9K. That is for a guy hitting leadoff as the away team in a positive split with this much stolen base upside. D. Gordon is a fantastic play today against Garrett Cole.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same situation. Cole, worse versus lefties, more so this year than the past, but he's always, been worse versus lefties than righties. Still, Cole's not really a guy I love the target, but again, the park's not terrible for left-hand power. So, and Yelich has been, hitting fine all year. Plus, he does have stolen base upside. I agree with you on Gordon. One thing to note, one of the main reasons to target the Pirates is with Cervelli catching, because he is awful, defensively awful at stopping base stealing, but he is out, so that they have that Diaz catching, and I am unaware of his abilities behind the plate defensively, so that's something I'd have to look into. But it could be a downgrade from what your normal expectation is of steals versus Pirates team.
To me, it's D. Gordon. It doesn't matter for D. Gordon, in my opinion, who's behind the plate, as if he gets on base, he's going for it. But you might be aware, Cervelli's for sure out today.
I believe he's on the 7-day concussion DL, and I think that was recent, so I don't think he's eligible to return today.
Yeah, you're correct. He's out, and their other catcher is also out. So it is Elias Diaz. So may have to look into that. I don't have his numbers pulled up.
Yeah.
But D. Gordon still is going to be a great play on FanDuel Cash, and you will see him quite a bit. Anybody else you want to touch on from this game?
No, I think let's move on.
Okay, this next game, the Red Sox and the Yankees, is very interesting. We've got two very competent pitchers. The Red Sox and David Price in Yankee Stadium take on Michael Pineda. The Yankees are minus 116 favorites. The run total is only 8. As I mentioned, these are two pitchers I'm very interested in. I think you're going to like David Price. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, both these pitchers I'm interested in. It is a tough spot for both of them, obviously. So it's going to be a tough decision on what to go. But yeah, Price looked brilliant his last start. Looked completely healthy, and there's a lot of strikeouts to have in this Yankees lineup now. It's not the same lineup we had last year where they didn't strike out nearly as much. So, I mean, it's a decent opportunity for Price, a decent spot. He did struggle in Yankee Stadium last year, but a lot of that was during his time early in the season where he was 2 of the 3 games he pitched there were early in the year when he was really struggling with his mechanics. And if you take 2016 out, he has pitched well in Yankee Stadium, which makes sense. I mean, if you're pitching in Yankee Stadium, you want to be a lefty because of the great advantage left-handers have against righties with that short fence out and right. On the other side, Pineda is going to get a righty-heavy team, which you like. It's always scary him pitching in Yankee Stadium just because he gives up fly balls to lefties, and those can leave the park in a hurry. And you have Moreland and Benettini and Jackie Bradley, all 3 lefties in the lineup can are perfect at smacking balls to right field. So there's worry there. But there's not a lot of strikeouts in this lineup. But Pineda's the type of pitcher that can have an elite game versus anybody. But yeah, the matchup for Pineda definitely below average. He's still kind of on the fringe, but David Price, like his spot, much better. As far as hitting, I really don't want to attack Price with any of these Yankee bats. There's no discounts, especially on DraftKings. They didn't discount the hitters at all versus Price. Price at 9.4K on DraftKings. I mean, he's going to be up to 11, 12K here soon. So I mean, it's a great discount for him. What are your thoughts?
There are no hitters in this game that you're going to play or run into in cash games from anybody that knows what they're doing. It's just not a spot where you want to target Pineda or David Price with a hitter.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I guess Benettini is kind of pricey, but if you wanted to, I wouldn't mind Mitch Moreland in cash. He's really cheap if you had to punt first base.
There's just better plays at first base for cash that we'll talk about that I don't think you'll see any Yankee or Red Sox hitters from the sharper players. But the pitchers are very interesting as SP2s on DraftKings. You mentioned David Price. This is his third start since coming off the DL. The Yankees have the fourth lowest projected total today at 4.10 runs. It is in a bad stadium, but the Yankees strike out 23.6% of the time to left-handed pitching, which is the sixth highest in the entire league. And that's why I was very interested in him. I don't like that he's opening up as a underdog here. But if you need strikeouts, and that's usually what you're targeting on DraftKings from your pitcher, at 9.4K, that's an interesting spot that I really want to see the lineup when it comes out, and I think David Price is definitely in play.
He definitely should be. I mean, right now he should be. They should have jacked him up to close to 11,000, even with him coming off the injury. So it's definitely a deep discount.
On the other side, Michael Pineda, I don't want to target the Red Sox offense because they only strike out 18.5% of the time to right-handed pitching, which is 29th out of 30. So, but he's the favorite. That's why it was confusing for me, and I had to dig deep into the Pineda versus Price spot here. I think I would side with David Price in cash games if you're going to pitch him as an SP2, but ultimately I think you'll probably not run into a lot of this action just because they don't want to go against the Yankees offense and they don't want to go against the Red Sox offense, but it is a good spot for SP2 in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't understand that line. I'm guessing Vegas has some perceived risk in Price yet, that he's not fully healthy and could struggle or end up being limited. Maybe that's the only thing I could explain because, like you said, I like Pineda always. Great pitcher, can have late games, but it's a bad spot for him. These right-handers don't strike out at all, and he's gonna have to come over the plate. And he has a habit; he doesn't give up on at bats. He wants to strike everyone out. And if they're not striking out, he ends up throwing in fastballs right down the middle and says, see how far you can hit it.
If his slider's off, he gets crushed. It's been one of those things where I've roster Pineda this year. And if he's on, he's on. But if he's off, you're in for a long day. And that would give some run support to David Price. But definitely a spot to monitor when you're building your lineups if you're looking for an SB2. Speaking of SB2, our next game, we have the Chicago White Sox and Derek Holland in Tampa Bay to take on the Rays and Jake Odorizzi. Odorizzi is a minus 150 favorite. The run total is 8.5. We're in a pitcher's park in Tropicana. Right-handed pitching against the White Sox has been a thing all year. Are you targeting Odorizzi today?
No interest for me. He's been getting hit really hard lately. He's a pitcher that's had reverse splits his whole career. So I really don't like him against an all, mostly right-handed lineup either. And I just don't see it for me at all. Not enough upside. He's been struggling. He's got one of the hardest hit rates on the slate. He's actually just barely below Derek Holland, and he's got the worst soft contact rate the last 30 days on the slate at 7.5%, which is extremely bad. So I fear pitching Jake, and actually have some interest in some of these White Sox hitters. I don't mind.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. That is a great point you make about his most recent form. People are going to look at this matchup on paper and see that the White Sox have the second lowest projected team total at 3.96 runs today. They strike out 23.2% of the time to right-handed pitching, which is the sixth highest of the season. And they're going to see right-handed pitcher against White Sox, and they're just going to plug in Jake Odorizzi as SP2 on DraftKings. You may even run into him on FanDuel as the SP1. And I think it's a trap. He's just been bad lately. A lot of the runs that were piled on his last start, he got off the hook because there's an error on Brad Miller, but he got shelled his last start in a pretty decent spot. And I think you can find better even at his 7.9K price. I think you can pay up a little bit more for a lot more safety today. but you're going to run into Odorizzi a lot in cash games, especially on DraftKings, and I think it might be a trap.
Yeah, like just looking at his game logs, his last 4 games, he was in Seattle, got 0 soft contact. He was in Minnesota, got 5%. He was at home versus Angels, got 7%. And then at Cleveland, got 5% soft contact. So he's just getting hit very, very hard, very consistently, very hard. And yeah, his xFIP the last 2 versus Seattle and Minnesota was a 6.5 and a 9 xFIP. So he's had back-to-back awful games. And I think he has changed his pick mix up. I got to look into that. That would I saw someone write an article about that they expected his splits to kind of neutralize because like in 2016, 2015, he was a very reverse split guy, and you wanted to target him with righties, especially righties with power. So I'm still kind of buying into that, and that's kind of why like I have a lot of faith, especially at Jose Abreu, who's really cheap on DraftKings, 3.3K. I think it's a great spot for him to get into one, and Todd Frazier too. Not a bad spot at all for him at third at 3.9K.
What about Avisel Garcia, who's been hitting cleanup, and he's only 2.9K on FanDuel?
Yeah, he makes a great play on FanDuel. Too cheap there. He's 3.9 on DraftKings. He's definitely in play, but not a outfield spot for me. I got a lot of outfielders I like, so probably not a place I'm going to. I usually like to play Garcia versus lefties too. So that kind of takes me off. As far as Derek Holland, who has been god awful too.
Yeah, I think we're bearing the lead here.
Yeah,
but you can against Derek Holland.
You can target pretty much the whole team. Just like last game, the Tigers absolutely destroyed him. He might get saved some. The stadium's going to help him some because he does struggle getting the ball up in the air on hard hit. He's a ground ball pitcher, but when he doesn't get it on the ground, it's hit in the air and hard. And the stadium could save him some on some homers just because it's a tough stadium to hit homers out of, but. Even so, you gotta love like Longoria, even like Tim Beckham, Souza, who we batting the lead off. Again, he doesn't have as much power versus lefties for some reason. His whole career, he's always been able to hit righties for more power, but against Holland, there's no concerns there. Souza makes for a great play guy. Has been hitting the ball really hard the last 15, 20 days. And then, the 2 lefties, Dickerson and Logan Morrison, I have no problem pitching lefties or having lefties versus Holland, and both those guys are very competent versus lefties anyway. They're not a lefty that just really struggles with left-hand pitching. What are you seeing?
Cash games, you're going to see right-handed bats from the Tampa Bay Rays. The numbers on paper, this is a large enough sample size this season that we can put a lot of stock into it. He's allowing a 362 WOBA with 11 home runs and 52.2 innings to right-handed bats. Hard hit rate is 43%. Fly ball rate is 45%. He's striking out 19%, and he's walking 10%. So you want to target these type of pitchers that walk a lot of batters and get hit hard. This is the guy. Derek Norris, if he makes the lineup, will be hitting 8th or 9th, and he's always been good against lefties. He is a great spot today if you need to pay down at catcher. At third base, Evan Longoria is going to be in play. He'll be hitting 3rd. And at shortstop, if Tim Beckham can make the top part of that lineup, if he's hitting 6th or higher, he's going to be in play. He's especially in play on DraftKings where he comes at a 3.5 price tag. That's just too low for a spot for a guy that's been a traditional lefty killer. And in the outfield, Steven Souza is affordable on FanDuel now. His price dropped. He's down at 3.5K. He will be somebody in consideration in this matchup against Derek Holland.
Yeah, I agree on everything. And Tim Beckham owes me some homers, so maybe I'll have to play him today and actually try to be on the positive side of one of his home runs.
One more play. I don't want to play him, but if Ricky Weeks, who is min price on FanDuel, makes the lineup and he's hitting 5th or higher, he's somebody that you might plug in if you need to save salary. He's not been good, but...
Yeah, he's been struggling, but like you said, Holland really struggles striking right-hand bats out, and that's Ricky's biggest weakness is the strikeout. So if you're going to play him, you want to play him versus guys that can't strike him out. So it's not a bad spot for him.
Okay, our next spot, we have the Philadelphia Phillies, and this was Ben Lively is the starting pitcher for the Phillies today. I had somebody down differently, but we've got Ben Lively pitching for the Philadelphia Phillies. He's at Atlanta to take on the Braves and R.A. Dickey. The Braves open as a minuscule -101 favorite. The run total is 9.5. How are you approaching? What do you know? First of all, what do you know about Ben Lively? This, I believe, the only thing I know is this is his second start in the majors, and in his first start, he went 7 innings and struck out 0 batters, but somehow only allowed 1 earned run.
Yeah, it was very strange that start, just because I looked up his minor league stats, and he was striking out over one right-handed batter per inning. So I mean, definitely has some showed some strikeout stuff in AAA, especially versus right-hand bats. So I'm not a big fan of grabbing righties versus him today. But he struggled mightily versus left-hand bats in the minors and struck them out at about .4 per
Okay,
inning. So
that makes a little more sense. Than his first start was versus the Giants, which probably had a very heavy lefty presence in that lineup, so that might explain why he had 0 strikeouts. He did walk 3 batters in that game, allowed 4 hits, but he only gave up 1 earned run and got the win in quality start. So what it sounds like is he's got a track record against right-handed batters, but lefties he may struggle. So he will face a few lefties here from the Braves. How are you approaching it?
yeah, I mean, I love Matt Adams again today. Kind of a broken record. It seems like he gets a right-hander every day now that he's become a Brave. Nick Markakis had a big game last night. I don't mind him at all batting 3, because this guy, and when I looked up his minor league numbers, just gave up tons of hits, tons of contact to left-hand bats. And you love that for a guy like Markakis, and maybe he'll get lucky and actually get one in the air for once and over the fence. He's due to get one of his 5 homers for the year soon. And then Inciarte, great spots, batting leadoff on the side you want. And I mean, all these lefties, even Ruiz that batting 7th or 6th today, doesn't make for a terrible play if you really want to punt third base. And then on the other side, Dickey has been terrible. Giving up a little more to lefties, but as a knuckleballer, that's really not I really don't worry too much about splits. He is, with knuckleballers, the one time I really like to look at BVP, and I don't know, have you looked at the BVP for this Phillies team versus him?
I have. There's not a lot that stands out as far as sample size goes, but Odubel Herrera is 2 for 5 with the home run. Michael Saunders is 3 for 7 with 2 home runs. Freddie Galvis is 4 for 14 with 1 home run, and Cesar Hernandez is 3 for 5. That was the only thing that kind of stuck out.
Yeah, and the one thing, I mean, just to reiterate, BVP for me is important versus knuckleballers, just because it is such a different pitch, a different pitcher. So I do like to see how hitters have I put a lot of weight to how hitters have performed in the past versus a certain knuckleball pitcher. And so you see those 2 homers from Saunders, 3 and 7 at bats. Saunders made sense as a play before the BVP, and now after seeing that, I have a lot of love for Saunders in this Atlanta
Are you worried
stadium.
that he might not make the lineup with Howie Kendrick and Aaron Altair?
I would think they're getting him in the lineup because I think even
if he hits 5th or higher, he's a great player.
He'll hit 6th. He'll hit 6th or 5th. I would assume, because I think the managers do the same thing for knuckleballers. You want to get people in there that have seen it before. You don't want people seeing it for their first time. So a guy that's shown that he can hit it even in the limited 7 at bat sample. But yeah, I think he'll be playing. I would be shocked if he's not in there.
Well, let me jump in here as we're talking about the knuckleball, and my favorite play of the day is my cover boy from my Tom Steak article is Odubel Herrera. We talked about his BVP, but more importantly, R.A. Dickey against left-handed bats this season. This is the most absurd stat that I think I've come across. He's striking out 7% of left-handed bats. 7%. So Odubel has already been in the zone lately. He's been a doubles machine. He's got a couple home runs. He's just been crushing. His price is still reduced on both sides to almost a laughable stock from what he's been. He's 3.1K on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he's 3.7K. You're going to see Odubel Herrera in every Sharp Players cash game lineup. So just lock him in and move on. I mean, if Dickey's not going to strike out these people, the ball's going to be put in play. I mean, okay, here's the other part of it. He strikes out 7% of left-hand bats. He's walking 10%. So again, this is a situation where the ball's going to be put into play. You want to target those type of pitchers, especially in cash games. So Odubel Herrera is an A+ play today for me.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. He's got like a 14 strikeout rate this year versus righties, 7% versus lefties. So yeah, he is showing More struggles versus lefties right now. But again, with knuckleballers, the splits in the end usually end up being pretty close. So it's not really a thing I really worry about. And I would like him if he bat right-handed either. So it doesn't really. But yeah, you really do love him in that spot betting too in this stadium that's made for left-hand power. Perfect spot for him to take one of these knuckleballs over the fence.
Yeah, and as far as targeting Dickey, anybody from the Phillies offense is in play for me today. The 1 through 6
Yeah.
is going to be popular in cash games. I was going to ask you about on FanDuel, Tommy Joseph at first base he's 3.3K, which is fine, but on DraftKings he's only 3.2K. Do you have interest in Tommy Joseph? He's a power hitter against a guy that's only striking out 15% of right-handed bats. I think this is a spot. Okay, he's walking 12% of right-handed bats, so it's even worse his walk rate against. I mean, this is just a spot where Phillies are going to be on the base paths.
Yeah,
so you're going to want lots of Phillies.
Yeah, I mean Dickey's been just terrible this year. But I mean normally a knuckleball pitcher, if they lose control they can walk guys. But mainly when you have a knuckleball pitcher, at least for me, it's rare that I want to stack against them. I more just want to gamble and try to find the couple of guys that are going to hit the home run off him, because usually they're able to limit damage from the they don't give up tons of hits. It's more they leave one hanging, they give up the big play. So I usually try to just chase the big play. But he's been so bad this year that I don't mind anyone in this lineup. And I don't mind even maybe going with a stack, especially in it looks like pretty good hitting conditions. A little wind blowing out, 75 degrees, humid. It looks like the day where the ball should be flying, and there could be a lot of runs scored in this game with the Braves putting out some good lefties versus the Phillies pitcher. So definitely a game you can game stack or stack the Phillies.
Of note, this is the 4th and 5th highest projected team totals. The Braves 4.84, the Phillies 4.66. And just one guy I wanted to hammer home that you're going to see in about every cash game lineup on FanDuel. You mentioned Matt Adams, who's been hitting 5th against Blake Lively. He's 2.7K on FanDuel. I mean, that's just a silly price for a guy that, since he's been an everyday player, he's just crushing. He had a home run yesterday. Of note, the Phillies bullpen got exhausted yesterday, and they brought in a position player because they didn't want to burn any more arms because the game was so out of hand. Does that provide us any sort of edge today?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you always, when you're facing a team, especially you got a kind of an unknown and a young pitcher only making his second start that could get blown up, and they might need to go to the bullpen early. And when you get to the bullpen, you love to have a tired bullpen. I mean, they're just going to give up more runs. I mean, look at what happened to the Twins there when they had that 16-inning game, and then for about the next 3 days, that bullpen couldn't get anyone out, and the Astros put up 15 runs a game. So definitely adds even more interest to these Braves bats, especially the lefties, and maybe even some interest in the righties. If the lefties can get to Lively, knock him out, the righties are going to get to see this tired bullpen, and it could make for a great stack.
Yeah, Matt Adams, he's the guy you lock and load in cash games on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he's also in play at 3.9K with outfield eligibility. Our next game, we have the Colorado Rockies in Chicago. Tyler Chatwood taking on John Lester. The Cubs are the biggest favorite of the day at -200. The run total is 9. I have a lot of respect for Tyler Chatwood as a starting pitcher when he's not in Coors. John Lester is one of the biggest names on this slate. I've got interest in John Lester. How about you?
Yeah, you don't mind going after attacking this Rockies team with lefties in the past, but now, today they're probably only going to have Cargo and Blackman as the only lefties in the lineup. It's going to be a right-hand heavy team, and Lester, he picked a guy off last game. He's showing some progress in holding runners, but this Rockies team has the ability to run almost up and down. Blackman, DJ, Arenado, Desmond, and Story all are willing to take off, and if they're getting on base, they could give him quite a lot of issues. And so I don't have a ton of interest in pitching Lester. I do have some interest in these Rocky bats. Tyler Chatwood's interesting as a pitcher. He's been great outside of Coors, and he's a guy that's able to limit damage. and get a lot of ground balls and pitch decent games. He's only at 7.9K. He doesn't offer you a ton of strikeout upside, and he did like attacking these Cubs when they were more right-hand heavy and had bigger strikeouts. But now, like we said yesterday, with Zobrist and Hayward healthy, it takes away a lot of the strikeout upside against right-hand pitching. So he's interesting, but he's not going to be a place that I'm going to go unless this lineup for the Cubs comes out and looks really weird. What are your thoughts? You're interested in Lester?
Well, what are you making of the Cubs being installed as minus 200 favorites, and they have a projected run total of 4.95? I don't think they get there against Chatwood. Chatwood is a guy that he's got bad numbers on paper because he pitches in Coors. But away from Coors, he's been a guy that sharper players have been playing in almost every matchup. Just for reference here, he was at San Diego against the Padres. Of course, the Padres aren't a great team, but he went 8 innings and struck out 8 last game. His last start before that was at Philly. He went 7 innings, struck out 8. I mean, this is a spot where Chatwood could limit this run total, and Lester and the Cubs as my 200 favorites is interesting. You got Miguel Montero, the catcher for the Cubs, who's only 2,100 on FanDuel. That's going to be popular in cash games if he makes the lineup hitting 6th or 7th. You got Ian Happ at second base. You got John Jay at outfield. And even some people want to play Anthony Rizzo at first base. All the lefties against Chatwood because of that Vegas line. But I don't know if they're great plays today.
Yeah, I'm not big at attacking Chatwood at all. The lefties don't make terrible plays, but it's it is a smaller slate, only 8 games, but still, there's a lot better places. It's kind of I respect Chatwood's ability to limit damage enough where I just don't have a lot of interest in getting a bunch of Cubs in my lineup or even as one-offs. And if I was a betting man, I'm a betting man, but if I don't know if I'd bet the under. I would pile on the Rockies money line. I'd pile on the Rockies money line. I think the Rockies win this game. I think they get to Lester.
Well, let's talk about Lester for a second because he is going to be very popular in cash games as an SP2. I mentioned David Price and Michael Pineda as this is the same price point, and a lot of people are going to be looking at Lester as the safer pivot on paper. He is the 200 favorite. He's the biggest favorite of the whole slate. The Rockies have the 5th lowest projected team total at 4.05 runs. They strike out 23.5% of the time to left-handed pitching, which is the 7th highest out of the 30 teams. And Lester at home in Wrigley has a 2.15 ERA as opposed to a 7.11 ERA on the road. So what that tells me is people on paper are going to like John Lester as SP2, and he fits a lot of builds, and he's relatively safe from an on-paper matchup.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a lot of weight.
You sounded kind of hesitant there. Tell me you just think the Rockies get to him? Because I've got a lot of interest in Lester as my SP2 today.
Yeah, I wouldn't put much into the splits. A lot of those come because Wrigley is so cold and hard to hit early in the year. And, it's going to be decent hitting weather there today. It's going to be, in the 70s to maybe even crack the 80s. Slight breeze, blowing out pretty neutral there. But, yeah, good. It's nice and warm. It's warming up there. And you got a right-handed heavy team that runs. And that's, exactly the type of teams I don't want to have, to pitch Lester. I just don't want to have him facing a team like this. And, the strikeouts, they're kind of there, but a lot of these, you got Story strikes out quite a bit. You got Reynolds strikes out quite a bit, but they're both right-handed. In Lester, much higher K rates versus lefties. You got Cargo, who's going to be the one lefty and you get a pitcher spot. But then Hannigan's right at average, and then Desmond, Arenado, Blackman, DJ are all well below average strikeout guys. So I don't see a ton of strikeout upside. Lester, he has flashed some strikeout upside in his last in a few of these starts here, but overall, I just never see him as really a high strikeout guy. And I think his price, I think he's too expensive, and I think the Rockies get to him here, and I don't see any positives.
Let's talk about. I want to get your opinion on this before we move on, because this is very important today for cash games. your number one pitcher in cash games is going to be Lance McCullers. We haven't talked about him yet, but he's going to be the guy that everybody locks in as your SP1 on both sides. He's 11-2. So on DraftKings, your next best options are in price order: John Lester, David Price, Michael Pineda, Jake Odorizzi, Garrett Cole. I think it's one of those spots where Lester's the safest option. You just hope that you trust Vegas and he gets out of it relatively unscathed with a K every inning. Because I don't trust any of these SP2 pitchers today.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, the slate, there's Lance, there's Price, and then there's the risky guys in Pittsburgh, Volquez and Cole, who we really don't love. But other than that, any of these other pitchers I want nothing to do with. Pineda, you really just don't. It's tough to attack the Red Sox. So yeah, it is
like. Do you take Odorizzi and the 2K price difference and just hope that Odorizzi doesn't blow up?
I don't. I think I take Chatwood before I take Lester, though.
Man, this is going to make or break cash games today, depending on where people go for SB2, because everybody's going to have McCullers. I don't have a decision currently. As I said, I was leaning John Lester.
Yeah, I think if you're playing McCullers, I just think you get Price in with him over Lester. I think Price has the better median projection and the better upside.
You just hope he gets the Ks and doesn't get hit. Versus, it's fascinating. I'm glad we spent a couple of minutes on this because this is the cash game make or break it spot today. Because it's your SB2 is very valuable today.
Yeah, not all, full disclosure, I know I've been wrong on the Rockies on the road before, and, they do tend to struggle more than you would think outside of Coors, and, Lester has been, really good lately, but I still, when you look at this line, you look at matchup by matchup, I just don't see it. Outside of Mark Reynolds and Cargo and, Hannigan the pitching spot, but the other five guys are all competent hitters should be competent hitters versus Lester and should give him a lot of trouble. And I think all of them, when they're on base, are going to be distracting him. He's going to have to pay attention because they're going to be willing to run. And yeah, I don't see a lot of positives here for Lester.
And again, we have to play who the slate dictates. So you're going to have to, this is one of those slates where on DraftKings, it's going to take some analyzing the lineups when they're released and picking the lesser of two evils, in my opinion, for SB2 and hoping it doesn't end your night. Our next spot is the Lance McCullers game, and we just referenced them, but we have the Houston Astros and Lance McCullers in Kansas City to take on the Royals and Jason Hamill. The Astros are minus 165 favorites, which is the second highest of the slate. The run total is 9. We're in Kauffman Stadium. McCullers is the clear SP1 today. As far as he's 6-1 in the season, he's got 8 quality starts and 12 games started. The Royals have the 5th lowest projected team total of 4.12 runs. They strike out only 20% of the time to right-handed pitching, which is the 17th highest out of 30 teams. But why is McCullers in such a dominant spot today? Do you agree?
Yeah, I think it's tough to argue against McCullers here today. He gets a nice park upgrade and go to Kansas City where it's a lot tougher to hit fly balls out of the park, and that can be an area that Lance can struggle at when he hangs one of his curveballs or anything. He does tend to give up some big fly balls, and in this park, those might have been homers in Houston. They might be caught in the warning track in Kansas City. So that's a positive. In this Kansas City lineup, just as something that doesn't strike any fear. And your strikeout numbers have been a lot better for them lately. They've been doing, for a while there, they were really striking out high rates, and they've really come down since then. But still, you look up and down this lineup, there's not anyone that really strikes a lot of fear in you against Lance, and you can see a lot of strikeouts. Especially if Moss and Gordon are in the lineup, Bonifacio should struggle against Lance's breaking stuff. Whit Merrifield, I can never figure him out. I don't know. Maybe he'll get 5 hits. Maybe he'll go for 5. I don't know anything about Witt.
Well, for what it's worth, he has faced the Royals once this season back on April 9th, and he went 7 innings, and he had 10 strikeouts, which is tied for the highest amount of strikeouts he's had this season. The issue that he's run into lately is he's walked 2 batters per game, and he's not even then he's not really been damaged that badly. He just hasn't been going as deep because his pitch count has been going up.
Yeah, he's had a lot of 3-2 counts.
Yeah, to further boost his matchup today, though, Salvador Perez, one of the guys that does instill fear in me, because listen to this, BVP. Salvador Perez off Lance McCullers is 3 for 8 with 3 home runs. Isn't that wild? Salvador Perez, 3 home runs. All of his hits.
That is great.
But he's dealing with a hand injury, and he's day-to-day. It might not be in the lineup. So if Salvador Perez doesn't make the lineup, take out those 3 home runs.
Yeah, and then you get Drew Butera, who's a great K target, and back in that lineup. So, not a great K target, but not someone that scares you anyway.
Well, I think we spent too much time on this because it's just the obvious play today. If you're not playing Lance McCullers in cash games as your SP1, you're frankly doing it wrong today. Even at his elevated price on DraftKings, he comes with the built-in strikeouts. He's going to get you 5+. You just plug in Lance McCullers in this spot and figure out the rest.
Yeah, I will just say, with Lance, you love the matchup. You love everything about him here. He can offer you that huge K upside, but there is a lot of risk there, as we've seen lately, with him not being able to pitch deep because he's been running at pitch counts. And so, if his control, if he's not on, he's a guy that is a risky pitcher in almost any matchup. But, yeah, you still love him. He's by far the best, price not considered, easily the best.
On this slate.
Yeah. And then on the big thing is Jason Hamill is awful. And this Astros lineup should be able to absolutely destroy him today, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you about. The issue I have is I want to get all these Astro bats in, but they're just so dang expensive, and the park is not ideal. And Kaufman, the Astros bats on DraftKings prices are just silly. They're the highest priced batters in the entire slate. George Springer, 5.6K. Jose Altuve, 5.5K. Carlos Correa, 5.5K. And then you have Bryce Harper is next.
Yeah.
I can't...
I like what they've done with the pricing. I like the pricing. I like the way they've jacked up the Astros here and really made you have to think long and hard about getting them in your lineups because they do cost you a lot of other upside at other positions. So I do love the pricing that DraftKings has jacked them up, but still, even at their high prices, I mean, then you have Josh Reddick is at 3.8K on DraftKings.
Yeah. I buried that one. He's Josh Reddick in cash games on DraftKings at 3.8K is a must play in my opinion. You're not going to get a better value for a guy that's going to be hitting second. The specific numbers against Jason Hamill, there's nothing to fear at any point here. To lefties, Jason Hamill is allowing a hard hit rate of 31%, a fly ball rate of 51%, only striking out 19% of left-handed bats. So Josh Reddick on DraftKings is a lock and load, and I also have a lot of interest in Brian McCann, who has 2 home runs in his last 2 games.
Yeah,
especially if he's
cheap
fifth.
and he's cheap on DraftKings too, only 3.2K. So I have a lot of interest in him too. But yeah, I mean, Hamill just has been able to really do nothing this entire season. He's getting hit hard. He traditionally got hit really hard by lefties, gave a lot of homers, and this year it's kind of been both sides of the plate. He did have a halfway decent start against the Indians last time, but did still give up 2 homers. But yeah, he's given up a ton of homers, a ton of hits. He's walking guys too. I mean, it's just a perfect spot for this Astros team. I mean, it's tough to fit him in, but they're gonna, I think, easily score the most runs of any team on this slate.
Well, how about this? Evan Gattis is the guy I always love to target when he's facing a low strikeout pitcher. And this season, Jason Hamill is striking out 15% of right-handed bats. So Evan Gattis is a guy I just mentioned. I like Brian McCann at the same position, but how's this for BVP? Evan Gattis is 3 for 4 with a home run. So it's small, but if you're not going to strike out Evan Gattis, he's a guy that swings for the fences. I like his prospects today. And, of course, Altuve, Correa, and if you can afford George Springer, those are monster plays. And we buried the best, most interesting aspect of the whole slate today. I don't know if you saw my tweet, but how are you handling Ramon Torres and his $0 salary on FanDuel?
Oh, I guess I hadn't even seen that.
Okay, Ramon Torres he's a called up guy. He made his debut yesterday, and he hit in the bottom half of the order. He had 2 hits and a double with the RBI. He scored 12.5 fantasy points on FanDuel. Today he is $0. I repeat, $0. If you plug in Ramon Torres and Lance McCullers, you can literally pick any bat you want. You are probably going to get a 0. He's not going to make the lineup, most likely, and he's against the best pitcher of the slate, the highest rated pitcher. But if he gets a walk or gets hit by pitch or even gets a hit or, heaven forbid, gets a RBI or something, he just allows you to do anything you want. You can get Bryce Harper. You can get George Springer. How are you approaching this?
Yeah,
I guess I kind of sprung it on you. You hadn't seen it, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess sometimes I don't look at FanDuel pricing right away, and I never even noticed. That's definitely an interesting game theory thing. FanDuel does this from time to time. They price someone really low, below their normal 2K minimum.
But even then it's been like 1.5K or something. This is 0. So even if you took a 2K minimum player, you're getting an extra $2,000 in salary. And on this slate where you want a Bryce Harper and a George Springer,
he's very, he's very competent in the minors too. Flashed some power, only 5 homers, stole 8 bases, only struck out 17 times in 210 at bats. So he's,
and if he just does anything, that is a monster, just slate changer if he does anything. Because at the shortstop position, Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, or Tim Beckham, or you go all the way down to this guy.
Yeah, and it's
maybe some of the Twins, but
it's definitely,
I'm fascinated.
Yeah, it's definitely a cash game. It definitely, for cash games, I think he's got to be.
Just take the 0, right?
Consider one of your top. Yeah, because he can give you more.
Bryce Harper.
He can give you more. He can get you points. For GPPs, I think it's probably a good spot to fade because I do think a lot of people will go there, and by you not, especially in big field GPPs, by you not going there, you end up with a completely different build because obviously you don't have that free spot where you have all this extra money. And, obviously if he gets some hits and all the high-priced bats go nuts, you're going to lose. But at the same point, if a lot of people end up doing that, you get a nice, a stack, a reasonable stack, and you find the hitters you like mid-price, and the big guys struggle, that's going to take out a ton of the field. You're going to have a much different lineup than, 20, 30, 40% of the field if that's how many end up going there. And it's going to be a great chance to have a huge night and a big field GPP. So I think in GPPs, I would probably lean on the side of fading him for sure, because I do think that gives you a big advantage against the field.
I tell you what, on cash games, you either pay all the way up for a Trey Turner or Carlos Correa, or you punt this dude and then you just load up with all the bats you love, because you're typically gonna have a 0 in your lineup almost every night, just based on how baseball works. If you plan for a 0, oof.
Here's the big question for you for cash games. You're saying you don't mind taking a 0. Do you play him if he's not in the lineup?
See, even then, I'm like, fine. There's been days where I've built a lineup and I'm like, man, I want this guy and this guy, but I can't, because the minimum guy is 2K. I can't get him in, so I have to rework it. But today, you can literally, it's like playing 8 guys instead of 9. But if I know Bryce Harper is in a spot where he's going to get me 12 plus fantasy points, like that's his floor, and then I can pair him with whoever else, it's fascinating. I'm going to be following this throughout the day to see how much buzz he has on just DFS talk and groups. But I love the spot as far as what you can do, because the other shortstop options, specifically on FanDuel, are 4.8 4.2 and 4.3K, and that is just crazy. I think we'll just follow it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I agree with you that even if he's not in the lineup for cash, I think he would be in play just to give you that free spot. And I'm just stumbling today. There is a lot of great higher price hitters like Bryce Harper today that you don't mind taking a zero and getting those in your lineups in cash. So it's really an interesting thing. It'll be interesting to see when that lineup comes out.
Well, let's talk about our last game in the slate here. We have the Minnesota Twins and Kyle Gibson in Seattle to take on the Mariners and Christian Bergman. The Mariners are minus 120 favorites. We got a run total of 9. 2 pitchers that people are going to load up against. Nelson Cruz is still day-to-day. He missed yesterday. How are you approaching, I don't think any pitchers in this game, but how are you approaching the hitting?
Yeah, the Mariners pitcher is it Bergman or Bregman? It's Bergman, right?
I believe it's Christian Bergman.
Bergman, it's Bergman. Struggles with right-hand power. You got Miguel Sano, who loves to hit against right-hand pitchers that struggle with right-hand power, especially a guy like Bergman that loves to just launch fastballs right down the plate from what I've seen. So
yeah, I want Sano.
Yeah, Sano's got to be one of the best plays on the slate. A perfect matchup for him.
Yeah, and I want to get the specifics of Bergman here. In 2017, he's allowing a 431 WOBA. He's pitched 17.2 innings right-hand bats. He's allowed 5 home runs. Hard hit rate of 32%, fly ball rate of 46%. But most importantly, with Sano, Bergman is striking out 11%. Only 11% of right-handed bats. And if you're not striking out Sano, you're in for it. His X velocity is... He hit a home run in this park last night. Miguel Sano is tier 1 for your third base play today.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, it is when you watch this Bergman pitch, it is. He just throws a pretty straight fastball down the middle a lot, and that is perfect for Miguel Sano to hit, and that's exactly what he likes to see. Brian Dozier, another fine play, still priced down on DraftKings, only 3.9K. Good spot for him hitting leadoff. Again, you got a guy that just throws BP. Today. Then up and down this lineup, he's been better versus lefties, but I don't mind. Kepler been still hitting the ball hard. Hasn't got the results, but a lot of that's just been bad luck lately, in my opinion. So don't mind him as an outfield option. But yeah, Sano definitely stands out for me. And as far as the Mariners, I like going with the lefties here versus Gibson. Cano and Kyle Seager stand out. Seager's been red hot now. Got another homer last night. Ben Gamel batting leadoff. Should be in a great spot. Gibson is a curious pitcher. He's walking a lot of guys. He's getting up a lot of hits.
He's been good though since he's been back, right? Didn't get
good. Basically, he got hit really hard against the Rays. And his other 2 starts, he actually pitched pretty decent. And the crazy thing about him, when I watch him pitch, is he gives up these walks, gives up all these hits, and then somehow when there's 2 guys on, when their bases are loaded, all of a sudden he just nails all his spots. He gets strikeouts. He's getting like a 12 and a half swinging strike rate in almost every start this year too. And so it just seems like he can only pitch when he's got the pressure on him. And all of a sudden he nails his court and hits the, right in the black and gets people to swing too. So he is not a guy I want to stack against, but I don't mind grabbing some left-hand power like Cano and Seager because he does, gives up those fly balls, especially the left-hand bats.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like he's a great pitcher. He's been better his last 2 starts specifically.
And people have been stacking against him, and it has not been working out at all just because he has been limiting that damage. I don't know if it's a Houdini trick or if it's going to continue. Maybe he'll actually start pitching well without guys on base. Then he might be something.
Yeah, on paper, people are going to lock and load all the left-handed bats for Seattle because on paper, he's allowed 4 home runs, a 413 WOBA, hard hit rate of 39%, fly ball rate 38%, striking out 13%, and walking 10% to left-handed bats. So Robinson Cano is going to be very popular at second base. Kyle Seager, who is coming off, he has back-to-back home run games in this park, is also going to be very popular at third base. It's going to be one of those instances where you decide, do I want Sano or do I want to pay down to Kyle Seager? And on DraftKings, Kyle Seager is very, very priced at 3.9K. He's a full $1,000 cheaper than Miguel Sano. On FanDuel, he is $800 less, so it's also a decision. But I love both third basemen here. And in the outfield, Ben Gamel will be hitting leadoff. It's just a spot where he's 2.9K on FanDuel and he's only 3.4K on DraftKings. And he's going to be extremely popular for this Seattle team that comes in with a decent 4.65 run projection.
Yeah, and it's worth saying, since Gibson came back up, he's had 3 starts, and he has done a much better job at inducing ground balls and getting less hard contact. Especially if you take out that Rays start where he did give up a bunch of hard hit balls. Other than that, the other 2 starts, he is only, he's still not great, but it's only, in the 30s for hard contact, which a lot better than what he was doing. And in soft contact, still he's not inducing a ton. He's getting a lot of medium hit ground balls though, and he's been able to survive and limit the damage. And I do think these Mariners will be popular. So it's definitely kind of a spot for me that I might just avoid it. But it's tough to fade Cano and Seager here. They both great spots. Both would hit the ball well.
In cash games, the builds, they're not showing up as much, Cano and Seager, because at second base there are other plays and at third base there are other plays. But you're for sure going to see Ben Gamel, and don't be shocked to see that Mariners stack even in cash games. So that's our slate. 8 games, chock full, lots of game theory, specifically on FanDuel with the zero price player. To sum up the cash games, Lance McCullers is your clear SP1 on this slate. You lock him in on both sides and you figure out the rest. SP2 is going to be very difficult to decipher. It's between John Lester, David Price, Michael Pineda, Jake Odorizzi, and Tyler Chatwood. All have their red flags, and all are in precarious situations and price points. So SP2, it's going to be make it or break it, in my opinion, for DraftKings today. Hitting wise, the Nationals, stack them up as many as you can. Left-hand bats first. The Astros, as many as you can. The Phillies, I love them against R.A. Dickey in Atlanta. And I think the Mariners are going to be very popular against Kyle Gibson at home. That's your cash game summarization. How about GPP?
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting night. You have McCullers is going to probably be the most popular pitcher, but he is priced way up. For me, point per dollar, I think David Price is my number one pitcher. Just 2K savings makes a big difference, and I think him and McCullers have kind of similar projections, similar upside. So really like the savings there. But other than that, I mean, there's a ton of good hitting spots, a ton of bad pitchers pitching. It's going to be an interesting slate. It might actually not be a terrible idea to gamble on 2 cheap pitchers on DraftKings as well. There isn't a great cheap one, but pick a couple of these 8K guys or grab Chatwood and take a risk on Volquez or Cole, and just to give you more money to pay up for bats, because there's a lot of high-priced bats and great spots. We love the Nationals, love the Orioles. Both should be scoring a lot of runs. We love the Phillies against Dickey, and the Braves might be piling on some runs too if they get to that tired bullpen. And also, I think the Astros are going to score the most runs of anyone, and they are super expensive. So definitely a very interesting slate. Should be a fun one.
Let's talk about our last segment here, our player draft. Yesterday, Bluff and I had some conversations offline because after we finished the pod, the lineups came out, and 2 of my picks were Dexter Fowler, who didn't make the lineup, and Gary Sanchez, who got knocked down from the 2-hole to the 6-hole. So I ended up swapping my personal picks. I went to Aaron Hicks and Tommy Pham. Did I end up getting you, or did you beat me last night in our player pool?
I got you. It was a close one. You got 5 points from Jerk Store, and I got 5 points from Hernan Perez, who I switched in when you switched your guys in. And then we both got the walk from Judge and Hicks, so we were tied 7-7. But Jake Lamb got that big 3-run homer to outscore Pham 20-15. So it was a 27-22. Got my
high scoring affair.
Yeah, it was a bad one, but got my second win on the year, so I'm 2-5. So you're the loser, so you actually have to pick first this time.
Well, I'm going to lock and load my number one pick. I'm going to go back to that Seattle game we just finished talking about, and I want Miguel Sano up against Christian Bergman. If you're not striking out Miguel Sano, I've got him hitting a home run or at least extra bases tonight. I just love his spot against Christian Bergman. Miguel Sano.
Yeah, and I'm going to grab – I want the win here. I want to get my third win, so I'm going to grab 2 really expensive guys, and I'm going to take Correa and Bryce Harper. And then I'm going to go with the cheap pick. I'm going to believe in the 7 at-bat sample size and believe in the stadium and grab a Philly. Michael Saunders for me at 2,900 on DraftKings. We'll finish off my team. So we got Correa, Harper, and Saunders for me, and Sano, Abdul, and D. Gordon. So I definitely have the salary advantage, especially with Harper and Correa at 5K. But yeah, I want Sano myself, but we'll see. Yeah, there's some big tournaments tomorrow. I think there's a big 1,500 on both FanDuel and DraftKings, so not a bad idea to jump in some satellites today to try to chase the glory and the 200K first prizes in those tomorrow. So don't be afraid to throw some GPP lineups and some $3 and $5 satellites and try to hit the big score.
Did you like today's show? Did you find this information to be helpful? Give us a shout out on any social media platform, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Of course, don't forget to use the hashtag RotoRadarMLB in your post. Every time you use that hashtag, you'll get a ticket to our $20,000 raffle in July. You heard that right. $20,000. We appreciate every single one of you for being RotoRadar members. On the RotoRadar will be available for members only Monday to Friday for the remainder of the MLB season. As always, good night and good skill. For more information on our raffles, head over to our website, www.rotoradar.net.